You probably know who Kay Fassett is, but do you know what inspires him? And do you know what his house looks like? Well, if you want to, you're going to want to watch today's video because I'm going to be taking a look at a book that tells you just that. Hi, I'm Kim Jamieson Hurst of Chatterbox Quilts. Today I'm taking a look at Kay Fassett in the studio. And there is so much in this book. I'm only going to be able to show you a little bit of it, but it is such an interesting book. So if you like Kay Fassett, which I do, I love Kay Fassett's designs, and his fabric, of course, is phenomenal. You may not like him. You either do or you don't. That's kind of how it goes. But what I find fascinating about his fabric is how he uses his fabric in his designs. Okay, there's lots of color going on there, lots of shapes and everything, but yet he manages to take them and put them together. So when I look at any of his designs, I'm really investigating and taking a really close look at how he puts them together and how does it all work. Well, in Kay Fassett in the Studio, which is what I call a coffee table book, it's a pretty big hardcover book, you can see where his inspiration comes from. You can see what his house looks like. And again, it's going to be either, oh my gosh, it's amazing, or oh my gosh, I could never live in a house like that. I'll be quite honest with you. But this book is fascinating, I think. Really interesting read. So let's take a look. As I said, there's a lot to see in this book. But the photos, like in any of his books, are beautiful. They're amazing. And so you can take a look and see what his house looks like, what his studio looks like, and what some of his designs look like as well. Some things we may not have seen otherwise. So you can see when you take a look here, the fabric, not the fabrics, the designs, I should say. Look at all the flowers, right? Look at the floor. Look at the tapestry on the wall, you know, the rug on the floor. You can see these design elements repeated over and over and over again. That's what ties a lot of his rooms together. Okay, so we know he's in London. That's where he's at now working. And you get this glimpse into where he works and where he lives, right? A little bit different. So you can see, look at, he's got a nice design wall, doesn't he? And you can buy that design wall, that gridded flannel, if you want to use for your own design wall. Really helpful because it's got the lines in it, but I digress. But look at the fabric, okay? And you can see Brandon Mabley is working away there too. So yes, he talks about where he works and how he likes to work and that type of thing too. And I loved seeing all his books. Now, this is only one area. He has a hallway library, he calls as well. But I thought, thank goodness, someone else who has probably as many, if not maybe more books than I do. But, you know, you've got to have this type of information. You can see he'll be looking through them, getting design ideas, color ideas. And while we're quilters, you know, he started with knits, right? So he still does knits, and he does cross stitch as well. So you have different patterns that he produces for those different types of crafts too. But I love how this book is put together with all these different, you know, like there'll be some pages like you saw before where you've just got, you know, one picture, and then you have these ones where they're pulling everything together. So you can see the repetition of like black and white in the shells he's got here and in the pottery. He loves to collect pottery. You can see the colors that come out, these reds and kind of rich colors that he has too. I can see where his inspiration comes from. And then you can see, you know, the beautiful fabric, and you can see he likes to paint too. He paints as well, right? So he has painted this particular cabinet. So you can see the pottery that he likes to collect. He's used that when he's painted the cabinet. So even the furniture is really colorful and detailed. Remember I mentioned he does cross stitch. Well, here you have some patchwork. You've got some cross stitch. Look at all the color and the rich. It's just so rich. That's probably the word I would use when I talk about his fabrics, is, you know, rich, right? Just full, saturated with color. And he's a color master. There's no doubt about it. You can learn a lot just by looking, looking. There's so much going on. Here he's got some mosaics going on here. That's in his, I think in his kitchen, actually. Let me see here. Yes, behind his sink, apparently. But again, you see these different pottery pieces he has, which he repeats in coloring, painting on different furniture pieces. Even his pottery, the dishes that he uses, I should say the dinnerware that he uses, is, you know, colorful too, right? There's just a lot going on. There's just so much to look at here. I'll repeat that about 1,000,000 times in this video, I'm sure. Okay, so again, you can see this area here, which is where Brandon lives, much less what's the word? I hate to say cluttered, but that comes to mind sometimes too. Much more open, much more spacious. Not all those rich colors, okay? So there's a contrast in this house, all right? But you can see, you know, there's paintings. Pottery is a big one. You'll see a lot of pottery. But remember I mentioned here in his books that he has books elsewhere as well. More books, masks. Look at the fabric. Look at the fabric. Oh my gosh. Just tons and tons and tons of it. Those rich colors, right? Oh my gosh, beautiful. And then you go outside and we continue the mosaic theme. Look at the mosaics. Can you imagine how long it would take to make this? I can't. All right, on the walls and everything as well. All over, right? On the plant stands, on the floor. Yeah. And then you have some of his quilt project. You'll see here, he's even got tiles with some of the, you'll recognize some of these that you see in his fabrics are very similar designs in his fabrics, okay? I have to laugh here. He talks about time and motivation, okay? How does he get so much done? Because he says people often ask him, do you ever sleep? Okay, because, you know, he has so much going on. He doesn't own a mobile phone. He doesn't go on the computer. Well, just think of how much time we'd have if we didn't do that either, right? He has assistants, of course, that help him too. But if you don't have those distractions, you can get a lot more done, right? Okay, more books, more fabric, more inspirations. You know, when you look at his other books and he has his quilts photographed, they're often on buildings, right? They are, you know, in different places. They're not just, you know, just the quilt. It's always the quilt on a wall or against a building or draped, you know, on a fence, something like that. So he gets a lot of his inspiration from when he travels and he sees all these different colors and designs in other countries. Porcelain, I told you he likes to collect porcelain and pottery. There's an example of some of his collection. Okay. And you realize he's been doing this for a long time too. So, you know, he has a lot of travel experience and a lot of, you know, different influences that he's seen over the years that show up in his fabrics and his patterns. Okay, he talks about how he designs his fabrics. You can see him painting. I told you he paints. There we go. We're going to start with a painting and we're going to translate that into a cross-stitch pattern or into fabric, right? Shows up in a lot of different areas. Again, those luscious, rich colors. And I absolutely love this. I'm not a cross-stitcher, but I absolutely love this. It calls it Blood Red Rose on blue cushions. The richness of those colors, I think, is just phenomenal. You know, maybe I'm going to have to start cross-stitching. I don't know. Maybe I'll come up with this in a quilt pattern. I would love that. But just those colors are just so rich, so effective. And then here's some of his patterns. So there are patterns in the back of this book, by the way. So rail fence knit, okay? So we think of rail fence as a quilt. You could knit it up in an afghan as well. And here's some more combination. So this is a painting of his, but you've got the combination of the patchwork and then the different pottery pieces that he so enjoys. Beautiful. Just beautiful. Again, I talk about color all the time because what else can you say? When I say Kay Fassett, what's the first thing that comes to mind? To me, it's color, right? How he uses color. You can see here, even in the arrangements he has in his house, color always comes into play and is always thought of. And you can see where he's got this design here and he's actually painting it, right? So he's got these all arranged, I should say, this arrangement, and then he's painting it. So you can see how that's coming out. So he's a master at a lot of things. And then we go to the next part, which is how to. So again, I mentioned that there are patterns in this book. So you can see some of the different patterns that are in it. And they're not just all quilting patterns either. You've got these different, go back here for a second, to that Blood Red Rose, okay, in the cross-stitch design. So, or needlepoint, I should say, it's not cross-stitch, I'm sorry, my mistake. Needlepoint, you can tell I don't do it, obviously. But he has all those patterns for the different things you're seeing. Previously in the book, he has different patterns in here. So whether it's knitting, needlepoint, patchwork, you have different patterns in the book. I love this, needlepoint basics. Apparently you need a hammer, okay, to keep everything down. I'm not sure he's putting it onto something, I think, onto a chair or something like that. And there's that rail fence knit pattern as well. So the point of this is not really the patterns, the projects in the book. It's that look behind you know, the master colorist, if you will, to see where his inspiration comes from, to see how he works, to see his house, which is always interesting. I think it's always interesting to see people's houses or studios where they work and how they work. So if you like Kay Fassett, this is, in my opinion, a must-have book. It's a hefty book for sure, but it's one you go back through and look at over and over again and get more and more ideas. And I said, looking at those pictures and just trying to examine them and find out what all is going on in there is really, really interesting and something you see a lot in this book. So I will put a link below to Kay Fassett in the Studio if you are interested in getting your own copy or seeing a little bit more about this book. Thanks so much for watching today. Remember to like this video and share it with your quilting friends. I'm still overwhelmed by Kay here. And remember to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll be notified the next time I release a new video. And before you go, check out these other videos I've included just for you. For more helpful quilting information, please go to my website at www.chatterboxquilts.com.